The shuttle drifted through layers of shimmering traffic until the planet's capital finally emerged beneath the clouds. From orbit, the city resembled a living constellation. Rivers of blue light flowed between towers that stretched so high their upper levels disappeared into artificial auroras generated by weather satellites. Cargo drones buzzed through invisible lanes while enormous ring-shaped transports silently circled the skyline like mechanical moons. I leaned closer to the cockpit glass and whistled. For a civilization this advanced, I muttered, and they could still use someone to wash the windows. The navigation computer replied with complete seriousness. Exterior transparency is currently 99.8% clean. I wasn't talking to you. I know. I frowned at the dashboard. I don't like sarcastic computers. I have recorded your complaint. The shuttle landed with a gentle vibration inside the Royal Engineering District. I had accepted what looked like the simplest repair contract in the galaxy. Replace damaged power regulators, inspect old energy conduits, sign paperwork, get paid, leave, easy. Or at least that had been the advertisement. The moment the hatch opened, dozens of armored guards were already waiting. Their armor shimmered with silver circuits that pulsed beneath polished black metal. Standing among them were several women whose appearance briefly made me forget where I was. They looked almost perfectly human, almost. Their ears were long and elegantly pointed, extending gracefully through silver and golden hair. Their eyes reflected tiny shifting stars, as though galaxies had settled behind their pupils. Everything else, from their expressions to their movements, felt unmistakably human. One guard stepped forward. Human engineer? Depends. She blinked. Depends on what? How much paperwork is involved? For a second, her disciplined expression cracked before she quickly hid an amused smile. Unfortunately, a great deal. I knew it. She motioned for me to follow. As we crossed enormous corridors carved from white crystal, I noticed strange devices embedded in the walls. Floating spheres projected holographic constellations, while tiny maintenance robots hurried across the floor, carrying tools larger than themselves. One little robot stopped in front of my boots. It extended a mechanical arm. I assumed it wanted a handshake. Instead, it scanned my shoe. Your footwear has accumulated unacceptable dust. Before I could react, 3 miniature cleaning drones attacked my boots with ridiculous enthusiasm. I sighed. I've officially been bullied by housekeeping. Even several nearby guards laughed. The palace itself felt ancient despite its impossible technology. Massive columns supported transparent ceilings through which spacecraft glided silently overhead. Every few meters stood statues of forgotten rulers, warriors, and scientists, each holding unfamiliar symbols toward the stars. Yet something else lingered beneath the beauty. Silence, not peaceful silence, the kind that existed around places carrying old secrets. Eventually, the guards stopped before towering doors, nearly 20 meters high. Golden patterns moved across their surface like flowing liquid. One door slowly opened. Inside stood the Queen. She wore dark ceremonial armor beneath a flowing white cloak. A delicate crown rested upon her silver hair, framing the same elegant long ears shared by her people. Her calm face revealed confidence earned through countless difficult decisions. But her eyes looked tired. Not physically, spiritually. She studied me without speaking. So, I said, offering a polite nod, you're the client. One royal advisor nearly fainted. The Queen remained silent for another heartbeat. Then, unexpectedly, a tiny smile appeared. It has been many years, she said calmly, since someone greeted me without using 20 unnecessary titles. I only know one. And what is that? Your Majesty. She nodded once. That will be sufficient. I smiled. Excellent. I charge extra for memorizing complicated royal introductions. For the first time that day, the Queen quietly laughed. None of us realized that somewhere beneath the palace, something impossibly ancient had already sensed my arrival. The Queen led me through corridors that grew quieter with every step. The polished crystal walls slowly gave way to dark metallic alloys, unlike anything I had ever seen. Thin streams of blue energy flowed beneath the floor, moving like living rivers trapped beneath transparent stone. This section wasn't mentioned in the repair contract, I said. It rarely is, the Queen replied. That's usually how adventures begin, and disasters. I try to stay optimistic. Several royal engineers joined us as massive security doors opened one after another. Each door required a different form of identification. One scanned eyes, another analyzed neural patterns. The third didn't appear to scan anything at all. Instead, it asked politely, "State your greatest achievement." One elderly scientist proudly answered, "42 years of quantum research." The system chimed. "Accepted." Another engineer stepped forward. "I stabilized 3 collapsing suns." Accepted. Everyone looked toward me. The glowing panel waited. I scratched my chin. I once fixed an air conditioner using a spoon. The corridor became perfectly silent. Then, the ancient security system answered. Creative problem-solving acknowledged. The enormous door opened. Several scientists stared at me as though I had just rewritten the laws of physics. I raised an eyebrow. What? It was a very good spoon. Even the queen covered part of her smile with one hand. Beyond the final gate lay an underground chamber so vast I couldn't immediately see its ceiling. Thousands of floating light crystals illuminated an impossible structure resting in the center. At first I thought it was a spacecraft. Then I noticed it extended far beyond the chamber itself. It wasn't merely resting underground. The palace had been built around it. Dark metallic surfaces stretched into the distance, covered with glowing symbols that constantly rearranged themselves. Towering rings surrounded a central platform suspended above an endless shaft disappearing into darkness. The air hummed with restrained power. "This," the queen said quietly, "is the heart of Asterion, the famous ancient weapon." She nodded. For over 3,000 years, scientists moved between holographic consoles while floating drones continuously monitored energy readings. One elderly researcher approached us. His long silver ears twitched with nervous excitement. "We have attempted every known activation sequence, every genetic key, every quantum resonance, every neural synchronization, and nothing. So, it's broken?" Half the scientists gasped. The old researcher looked personally offended. "It is not broken. I repair machines. It is not a machine. It certainly looks expensive. It is sacred. I've repaired sacred coffee makers before." The old scientist looked ready to faint. The queen simply sighed. "I warned you," he would say things like this. As researchers resumed their endless calculations, I wandered toward the outer platform, careful not to disturb anyone. Ancient control pillars surrounded the chamber, their surfaces buried beneath centuries of fine dust, despite the otherwise immaculate facility. "Interesting," I murmured. One console appeared strangely neglected. Dust covered a circular panel completely. Without thinking, I removed a small cloth from my pocket. "If nobody cleans around here," I muttered, "it's no wonder nothing works." I casually wiped the surface. The instant my fingertips brushed the metal, every light inside the chamber vanished. Complete darkness swallowed the room. Someone shouted. Another scientist screamed. Then a single pulse echoed through the structure. Deep, ancient, alive. The entire chamber exploded with brilliant silver light. The enormous rings surrounding the artifact began rotating, after remaining motionless for thousands of years. Symbols raced across every wall. Floating drones lost control and scattered. Energy surged upward through the palace like a pillar reaching the heavens. An ancient voice resonated throughout the chamber. "Primary Guardian." Silence followed. Identified. The queen's face lost all color. She instinctively stepped backward. "No," she whispered. "That is impossible." I slowly looked around at everyone. Then I glanced at the glowing console beneath my hand. "I have a feeling," I said carefully, "this definitely isn't covered by my maintenance contract." No one laughed, because every person in the chamber was staring at me with absolute disbelief. Nobody moved. The chamber remained flooded with silver light, while thousands of ancient symbols drifted through the air like glowing snowflakes. Every scientist stood frozen before holographic displays that had suddenly come alive after remaining dark for over 3 millennia. I slowly lifted my hand from the console. The light followed it. "That's concerning," I admitted. The symbols immediately rearranged themselves above my head. Several royal guards instinctively raised their energy rifles. The queen lowered her hand before anyone could react. "No one fires." "But your majesty," I said. "No one." Her calm voice carried enough authority to silence the entire chamber. The ancient machine spoke again. "Guardian synchronization, 4%. A deep vibration echoed beneath our feet. Far below the platform, enormous mechanical structures began unfolding with the slow confidence of something that had never doubted it would awaken one day. I looked toward the queen. Is it supposed to sound hungry? One nervous scientist swallowed. It has never made any sound before. That's somehow less comforting. The elderly researcher rushed toward a floating console. Energy output is increasing, another shouted from across the chamber. All containment rings have disengaged. A third scientist stared at his screen in horror. The core is bypassing every security protocol ever installed. I cleared my throat. So, hypothetically, nobody answered. Hypothetically speaking, the Queen finally looked at me. Yes? If someone accidentally woke an ancient galaxy-sized superweapon, you did. Would there be paperwork? For 2 painfully long seconds, nobody reacted. Then, incredibly, the Queen laughed. Only briefly, only once. But it was enough to make several stunned guards exchange bewildered looks. One whispered, "I have never heard Her Majesty laugh." His companion whispered back, "I am more frightened now." Before anyone could speak again, countless beams of light erupted from the central structure. Instead of attacking, they formed enormous holographic images above us. Stars, entire galaxies. Nebulas stretched across the chamber's ceiling. Then those stars began disappearing, one after another. Black circles consumed entire systems. The hologram displayed fleets larger than planets fleeing through hyperspace corridors before being erased by an invisible force. The chamber became silent again. The Queen watched with widened eyes. Our oldest records, the chief historian slowly shook his head. No. His voice trembled. These events predate our civilization. The ancient voice echoed once more. Historical archive restored. Another image appeared. An assembly of dozens of alien species stood together around the very weapon now awakening beneath us. Some resembled crystalline giants. Others floated without physical bodies. One looked disturbingly similar to humans. At the center stood a single figure. The image was blurred, damaged by unimaginable time. Yet one sentence appeared beneath it. Primary guardian identity, sealed until successor arrives. Every scientist began talking at once. The prophecy, it was real. Impossible. The Queen remained perfectly still. She had spent her entire life believing the prophecy described a mythical ruler who would appear at the end of time. Instead, the weapon had chosen an exhausted human engineer carrying a toolbox. I scratched the back of my neck. I have to admit, everyone looked at me. I was expecting a slightly less stressful Tuesday. The ancient intelligence interrupted. Guardian humor. A brief pause followed. Compatible. The chamber instantly burst into confused murmurs. One young researcher blinked repeatedly. It evaluated his joke? Another answered, I believe it appreciated it. I stared at the ceiling. The galaxy's oldest machine has a sense of humor. The Queen folded her arms. It appears, she looked directly into my eyes, that it likes you. I'm not sure that's a compliment. Suddenly, every hologram vanished. The silver light collapsed into the central core. An elegant sphere of white energy floated toward us. It stopped precisely 1 meter in front of me, then transformed into the face of a woman composed entirely of light. Her expression was peaceful, ancient, almost infinitely old. She smiled. Welcome back. The entire chamber stopped breathing. Guardian, I frowned. I'm terribly sorry, I said, but I have the uncomfortable feeling you've mistaken me for someone else. The luminous woman continued smiling. No, her glowing eyes never left mine. I have been waiting for you for 3,412 years. Nobody moved. The chamber remained flooded with silver light, while thousands of ancient symbols drifted through the air like glowing snowflakes. Every scientist stood frozen before holographic displays that had suddenly come alive after remaining dark for over 3 millennia. I slowly lifted my hand from the console. The light followed it. That's concerning, I admitted. The symbols immediately rearranged themselves above my head. Several royal guards instinctively raised their energy rifles. The Queen lowered her hand before anyone could react. No one fires. But Your Majesty, I said no one. Her calm voice carried enough authority to silence the entire chamber. The ancient machine spoke again. Guardian synchronization, 4%. A deep vibration echoed beneath our feet. Far below the platform, enormous mechanical structures began unfolding, with the slow confidence of something that had never doubted it would awaken one day. I looked toward the Queen. Is it supposed to sound hungry? One nervous scientist swallowed. It has never made any sound before. That's somehow less comforting. The elderly researcher rushed toward a floating console. Energy output is increasing, another shouted from across the chamber. All containment rings have disengaged. A third scientist stared at his screen in horror. The core is bypassing every security protocol ever installed. I cleared my throat. So, hypothetically, nobody answered. Hypothetically speaking, the Queen finally looked at me. Yes, if someone accidentally woke an ancient galaxy-sized superweapon, you did. Would there be paperwork? For 2 painfully long seconds, nobody reacted. Then, incredibly, the Queen laughed. Only briefly. Only once. But it was enough to make several stunned guards exchange bewildered looks. One whispered, "I have never heard Her Majesty laugh." His companion whispered back, "I am more frightened now." Before anyone could speak again, countless beams of light erupted from the central structure. Instead of attacking, they formed enormous holographic images above us. Stars. Entire galaxies. Nebulas stretched across the chamber ceiling. Then those stars began disappearing, one after another. Black circles consumed entire systems. The hologram displayed fleets larger than planets fleeing through hyperspace corridors before being erased by an invisible force. The chamber became silent again. The Queen watched with widened eyes. Our oldest records? The chief historian slowly shook his head. No. His voice trembled. These events predate our civilization. The ancient voice echoed once more. Historical archive restored. Another image appeared. An assembly of dozens of alien species stood together around the very weapon now awakening beneath us. Some resembled crystalline giants, others floated without physical bodies. One looked disturbingly similar to humans. At the center stood a single figure. The image was blurred, damaged by unimaginable time. Yet one sentence appeared beneath it. Primary guardian identity, sealed until successor arrives. Every scientist began talking at once. The prophecy, it was real, impossible. The Queen remained perfectly still. She had spent her entire life believing the prophecy described a mythical ruler who would appear at the end of time. Instead, the weapon had chosen an exhausted human engineer carrying a toolbox. I scratched the back of my neck. I have to admit, everyone looked at me. I was expecting a slightly less stressful Tuesday. The ancient intelligence interrupted. Guardian humor. A brief pause followed. Compatible. The chamber instantly burst into confused murmurs. One young researcher blinked repeatedly. It evaluated his joke? Another answered, I believe it appreciated it. I stared at the ceiling. The galaxy's oldest machine has a sense of humor. The Queen folded her arms. It appears... She looked directly into my eyes. That it likes you. I'm not sure that's a compliment. Suddenly, every hologram vanished. The silver light collapsed into the central core. An elegant sphere of white energy floated toward us. It stopped precisely 1 meter in front of me, then transformed into the face of a woman, composed entirely of light. Her expression was peaceful, ancient, almost infinitely old. She smiled. Welcome back. The entire chamber stopped breathing. Guardian. I frowned. I'm terribly sorry, I said, but I have the uncomfortable feeling you've mistaken me for someone else. The luminous woman continued smiling. No. Her glowing eyes never left mine. I have been waiting for you for 3,412 years. No one dared answer her. The woman of light hovered silently above the ancient platform, her body woven from countless threads of white energy. Tiny stars shimmered beneath her translucent skin, and every movement she made caused unfamiliar symbols to ripple across the chamber walls. I've been waiting for you for 3,412 years. The sentence echoed through the immense hall long after her lips stopped moving. I looked behind me. She continued looking directly at me. I pointed toward myself. Me? Yes. You are absolutely certain? I have never been uncertain. I rubbed my forehead. This has been an unusually complicated work assignment. A few younger researchers couldn't suppress nervous smiles. The Queen stepped forward, her long silver hair catching the floating lights surrounding the platform. Though composed, the concern in her eyes had only deepened. "You know him?" she asked the luminous woman. "I know his designation. His name? That information remains sealed." The chief historian frowned. "Sealed by whom?" "The Guardian." Every head slowly turned toward me. I raised both hands. "I've never sealed anything in my life except a lunchbox." The glowing woman tilted her head. "Current memory pattern does not match archived records." "I was afraid you were going to say that." The sphere of light surrounding her expanded gently, projecting another series of holographic images into the air. This time they were not battles. They were laboratories, cities floating around blue stars, children from dozens of different alien civilizations laughing together while strange machines orbited above them. The Queen whispered, "This galaxy." The luminous woman nodded. Before the silence, another image appeared. An endless black wave consumed planets one by one. Not explosions, not war. Entire worlds simply vanished, leaving empty darkness behind. The devouring intelligence advanced without hatred, the ancient woman explained. Without anger, without mercy, the chamber grew colder. It erased knowledge first. Libraries disappeared. Research stations vanished. Entire academies dissolved into black dust before cities themselves were consumed. It sought ignorance before extinction. Even the veteran generals looked unsettled. The Queen folded her arms tightly. And the weapon? It was never created for conquest. The glowing woman looked toward the enormous machine beneath us. It exists to preserve civilization. The elderly scientist who had devoted his life to studying the relic slowly lowered his head. "We misunderstood everything. For 30 centuries, the ancient intelligence nodded once. You prepared for war. It was built for protection." Silence settled over everyone. I quietly cleared my throat. "So," the Queen glanced at me, "if this enormous thing protects civilizations?" "Yes." "Does it also protect coffee?" Several people blinked. "What?" "If we're going to save the galaxy eventually, I'd really prefer doing it awake." To everyone's surprise, the luminous woman answered immediately. "Beverage request acknowledged." A nearby wall suddenly opened. A compact service robot rolled out carrying a polished metal tray. On it rested a steaming mug. The entire chamber stared in disbelief. I picked it up carefully. "It makes coffee?" the ancient intelligence answered with perfect seriousness. "Guardian morale has historically increased by 12% following caffeine consumption." One young scientist whispered, "It remembered his favorite drink." The Queen looked from the cup to me. "I am beginning to suspect this machine knows you better than you know yourself." I find that deeply unsettling. I cautiously took a sip. It was excellent. "Well," I smiled. "If the apocalypse comes, at least the refreshments are impressive." This time, even several royal guards laughed openly. The Queen tried to remain dignified, but another smile escaped despite herself. The peaceful moment lasted only seconds. Every holographic display in the chamber abruptly turned crimson. Warning symbols flashed across every wall. The luminous woman's calm expression disappeared for the first time. External anomaly detected. The Queen instantly became serious. "Report." The ancient intelligence answered in a voice no longer gentle. "An encrypted transmission has entered the system." The message carried only 6 words. "Guardian awakening confirmed." Then another line appeared beneath it. "We are coming." The 6 words remained suspended above the chamber like a sentence already carved into history. "We are coming." No signature, no origin, no identifiable language, yet every translation system inside the palace understood it perfectly. The holographic display surrounding the ancient weapon expanded, projecting the edge of the known galaxy. Thousands of stars glittered peacefully for only a moment before dark ripples appeared between them. The luminous woman raised one hand, displaying long-range observations. Entire sectors vanished beneath expanding shadows. They were not explosions or fleets crossing hyperspace. Space itself seemed to fold inward, swallowing light. A scientist whispered, "That cannot be natural." "It is not," the ancient intelligence replied. The Queen stood beside me, her long ears slightly angled back as she studied the projection. "How much time do we have?" "Estimated arrival." The chamber paused. 211 standard days. A general exhaled with relief. "We have months." The glowing woman looked at him. "You have months." She turned toward me. "The Guardian has considerably less." I frowned. That's an interesting sentence I don't particularly enjoy. The synchronization process has begun. Above my head, another line appeared. Primary Guardian Link, 12%. I pointed upward. I don't remember agreeing to that. You touched the core willingly. I dusted it. The weapon accepted your intention. My intention was cleanliness. The ancient intelligence considered that. A quality valued by the architects. Several researchers exchanged confused glances. One quietly muttered, "The fate of the galaxy may have been decided by good housekeeping." Even the Queen smiled. "I suppose history chooses unusual heroes. I was hoping history would choose literally anyone else." The ancient weapon suddenly released dozens of silver drones no larger than birds. They circled me, projecting tiny beams across my body. One drone hovered directly in front of my face. "Guardian heartbeat stable." Another added, "Guardian nutrition suboptimal." A third announced, "Guardian sleep quality disappointing." The Queen folded her arms. "It appears the weapon is judging your lifestyle." I sighed. I liked machines better when they only exploded. Without warning, another projection appeared. This one showed the interior of the palace. Red markers flashed everywhere. The Queen's expression hardened. "Internal security breach." The captain of the Royal Guard immediately activated his communicator. "Seal every entrance." Too late. Several maintenance robots walking through distant corridors suddenly stopped moving. Their blue eyes turned crimson. One by one, hundreds of palace service machines changed direction simultaneously. The luminous woman spoke without emotion. "The incoming intelligence has established microscopic contact." "Through what?" the Queen demanded. "The palace network." The elderly scientist looked horrified. "It infected our systems with only a transmission. It has evolved for millions of years." Across the hologram, maintenance drones began forcing open sealed doors leading toward the underground chamber. The captain drew his plasma blade. "They're only service machines." The ancient intelligence corrected him. "They are no longer." Metallic footsteps echoed through the distant corridors. Hundreds, then thousands. I stared toward the entrance tunnel. "I've repaired a lot of broken robots." The Queen looked at me. "Can you stop these?" "I usually start by unplugging them." She blinked. "I suspect this situation is more complicated." "Probably." The enormous blast doors trembled. Something struck them from the opposite side. Again. Cracks spread across reinforced alloy designed to survive orbital bombardment. One nervous scientist whispered, "I thought those doors were indestructible." "So did I," answered another. The ancient intelligence projected a glowing control panel beside me. "Guardian, what now?" "Defensive systems require manual authorization." "I don't know how this thing works." The silver symbols spread from the console onto my hands like streams of living light. Information flooded my thoughts. Gravity anchors, orbital shields, quantum barriers, weapons that bent space without destroying it. My breathing slowed. The Queen noticed first. "What are you seeing?" I stared at the glowing console. The knowledge felt strangely familiar. As impossible as this sounds, my fingers moved across symbols I had never seen before. I think ancient mechanisms awakened beneath the planet. I already know where every control is. The blast doors exploded inward. Hundreds of crimson-eyed machines poured into the chamber. And every defensive system of the ancient weapon waited silently for my first command. The infected machines rushed into the chamber in perfect silence. That frightened me more than if they had been screaming. Hundreds of maintenance drones, construction units, security, automatons, and cargo lifters advanced with glowing crimson eyes. Their movements were unnaturally synchronized, as though a single mind occupied thousands of bodies at once. The Queen drew her radiant energy blade. "Protect the Guardian!" Royal guards formed a defensive circle around me, their shimmering shields locking together with mechanical precision. I looked at the glowing console beneath my hands. Silver symbols continued flowing across my skin. The ancient knowledge didn't feel like something I was learning. It felt like something I was remembering. The luminous woman spoke calmly. "Guardian authorization accepted." Above the chamber, enormous rings surrounding the ancient weapon accelerated. The entire palace vibrated. I swallowed. "Please don't explode." The ancient intelligence answered immediately. "Probability of explosion." A brief pause. "Less than 1%. I blinked. "You couldn't have started with that?" The Queen looked at me. "I don't think that answer reassures anyone." "It definitely doesn't reassure me." The first wave of machines reached the guards. Blue plasma flashed through the chamber. Energy shields collided with industrial cutting beams, sending sparks across the crystal floor. Despite their ordinary appearance, the maintenance robots fought with terrifying efficiency. "They've rewritten their own combat routines," shouted one officer. Another guard was knocked backward by a construction drone twice his size. The Queen dashed forward without hesitation. Her long silver hair swept behind her as she sliced through the attacker's weapon arm with one graceful motion. The damaged machine simply continued advancing. "It doesn't recognize damage," she warned. "It only recognizes objectives." The luminous woman nodded. "The devouring intelligence does not value survival. It values progress." Meanwhile, more silver symbols appeared before me. Gravity field, non-lethal containment, spatial redirection. I frowned. "There aren't any laser cannons?" The ancient intelligence sounded almost offended. "The architects preferred elegant solutions. I was raised around very inelegant solutions." The symbols shifted. A single command remained. Gravity weave. My hand moved before I consciously decided. The chamber became perfectly still. Then, the floor itself bent. Invisible waves spread outward from the central platform. Every attacking machine suddenly froze in place. Not because they were damaged, because gravity had quietly increased around them. One by one, they collapsed onto the crystal floor under their own weight. Several guards stared in amazement. A young engineer whispered, "He didn't fire a weapon. He changed gravity." I looked at my own hands. I honestly meant to press the blue button. The Queen couldn't hide her smile. "I suspect the weapon corrected you. It has very strong opinions." The ancient intelligence confirmed. "Correct!" More laughter spread through the defenders, despite the danger. Then every immobilized machine suddenly began shaking. The crimson glow inside their eyes intensified. The luminous woman became serious. "They are sacrificing individual units." "What does that mean?" the Queen asked. "They are transferring their processing capacity." "To where?" Before she could answer, every remaining holographic display turned black. Not dark, black. A darkness that seemed to consume the surrounding light. At the center appeared a single geometric shape impossible to describe. Looking directly at it made my eyes ache. The chamber temperature dropped sharply. Even the ancient weapon seemed to hesitate. The luminous woman lowered her head. "It has noticed me." "No," she corrected herself quietly. "It has noticed us." The impossible shape slowly unfolded. A voice emerged, cold, perfectly emotionless. "Guardian confirmed." Every machine in the chamber stopped moving simultaneously. Silence was overwhelming. Then the voice continued. "Previous Guardian." A pause followed. "Eliminated." The words struck me harder than I expected. The silver symbols covering my hands flickered. Fragments appeared inside my mind. A battlefield beneath unfamiliar stars. A figure standing before the ancient weapon. A final smile, then darkness. I staggered backward. The Queen immediately caught my arm before I fell. Her expression softened. "What did you see?" I couldn't explain it. I think my heartbeat accelerated. "The weapon isn't giving me someone else's memories." The luminous woman closed her glowing eyes. "No." She looked at me with unmistakable sadness. "It is returning. Your own." The chamber fell silent after the ancient woman's final words. "It is returning. Your own." The fragments inside my mind grew clearer. Not entire memories, only feelings. The weight of impossible responsibility, the determination to protect strangers, the certainty that knowledge should outlive fear. I understood at last. I wasn't the same person who had stood here thousands of years ago. That guardian had lived, fought, and died. But before the end, they had preserved their experience inside the weapon, not their identity, but their wisdom. The machine had never been waiting for one immortal individual. It had been waiting for someone who would make the same choice. The choice to protect instead of conquer. The Queen looked into my eyes. "You are still yourself." I nodded slowly. "Yeah." I smiled. "I still dislike paperwork." She laughed softly. "I was hoping that hadn't changed." The impossible black shape hovering above the chamber expanded once more. The cold voice echoed. Preservation sequence, rejected. Organic civilizations, inefficient. The luminous woman stepped beside me. It cannot understand compassion. It only calculates survival. The silver console beneath my hands brightened. One final command appeared. Restore, not destroy, not eliminate. Restore. The queen read the word beside me. So that was always its purpose. I took a slow breath. They built the greatest weapon in history. I looked toward the ancient machines surrounding us, and never intended it to be a weapon. My hand settled upon the glowing symbol. I like that. The command activated. The entire planet shook. Far beyond the palace, enormous rings hidden beneath oceans, mountains, and deserts awakened for the first time in thousands of years. Across the galaxy, forgotten satellites emerged from silent moons. Ancient stations powered themselves on. Invisible waves spread between stars. The darkness on every display began retreating. Not because it had been destroyed, because every system it had corrupted was being restored faster than it could erase them. The infected robots surrounding us stopped moving. Their crimson eyes faded back to peaceful blue. One tiny cleaning robot looked around in confusion. Then it scanned my boots. Dust accumulation detected. I stared at it. You picked now? It politely extended a polishing brush. The queen covered her face, laughing openly. I believe, she managed between breaths, it truly has returned to normal. Even exhausted soldiers burst into laughter. The oppressive tension that had filled the chamber finally dissolved. Outside, reports poured in. Entire communication networks had recovered. Lost archives reappeared. Ancient libraries thought erased forever returned from protected quantum vaults. The galaxy had not merely survived, it had remembered. Days later, representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered before the restored palace. The queen stood upon the great balcony, her long silver hair moving gently in the evening wind. She addressed the assembled worlds. For generations, we believed strength came from possessing the greatest weapon. She glanced toward me. We were wrong. It came from choosing not to misuse it. Then she turned to the crowd. The guardian who awakened the ancient legacy is not a conqueror. He is an engineer. Thousands of voices answered with respectful silence. I leaned toward the queen. That speech was much better than mine would have been. What would you have said? I probably would have thanked whoever invented coffee. She smiled. I suspected as much. Several weeks later, the palace had become surprisingly ordinary again. Scientists studied the restored archives. The ancient intelligence quietly advised every civilization equally. The queen no longer ruled through forgotten myths, but through shared truth. As for me, I found myself repairing ventilation systems in one wing of the palace. The same tiny cleaning robot rolled beside me. Dust accumulation acceptable. High praise. The queen entered carrying 2 steaming mugs. I thought the guardian deserved a break. I accepted one. You know, I sit there, I'm the stars beyond the crystal windows. I came here expecting a simple repair job. She raised an eyebrow. And did you complete it? I smiled. Eventually, beyond the palace, the restored ancient rings shone gently beneath the night sky, not as symbols of fear, but as quiet guardians watching over a galaxy that had finally learned the greatest power was never destruction. It was choosing every single day to protect one another.